The ancient Hermetic masters claimed that a person can live 70 years and never truly awaken, yet a single moment of understanding can transform the course of an entire life, because once you see the laws, you can never unsee them, and what follows may change the way you think about reality forever. Most people will spend their entire lives obeying invisible laws they do not know exist. Ancient Hermetic initiates believed this was the greatest tragedy of humanity, not poverty, not failure, not even death, ignorance. While the sleeping mind blames circumstances, luck, other people, and the chaos of the world, the awakened mind begins to notice something strange. The same fears return, the same conflicts repeat, the same disappointments wear different faces. The same victories follow familiar patterns again and again and again. In this journey through the Kybalion, the teachings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus and the wisdom hidden within the Corpus Hermeticum, we will uncover 7 ancient principles believed to govern every level of existence. More importantly, you'll discover why the highest Hermetic secret was never about controlling the world, but mastering the mind that experiences it. Chapter 1. Hermes Trismegistus and the Lost Wisdom of the Temples. There are names that belong to history, and there are names that belong to legend. Then there are a rare few that seem to exist somewhere between the two, suspended in a realm where myth and reality intertwine so completely that no one can separate them. Hermes Trismegistus is one of those names. For thousands of years, seekers have asked the same question. Who was Hermes Trismegistus? Was he a man, a priest, a king, a philosopher, or was he something else entirely, a symbol representing wisdom itself? The ancient Greeks believed Hermes Trismegistus was the union of 2 great streams of knowledge. One stream flowed from Egypt through the god Thoth, keeper of sacred wisdom, divine scribe, and guardian of hidden knowledge. The other flowed through Hermes, messenger of the gods and guide between worlds. Together they formed a figure whose title meant thrice greatest Hermes. Yet the mystery runs deeper. Ancient records tell us that long before universities existed, long before books filled libraries, wisdom was transmitted in silence, symbols, and initiation. Hidden chambers beneath temples served as schools of transformation, rather than places of information. The goal was not merely to learn, the goal was to become. An old Hermetic story tells of a young scholar who traveled across deserts seeking secret wisdom. He carried scrolls, maps, and questions. When he finally reached a temple, he expected teachings, lectures, and answers. Instead, the elder priest handed him a broom. For months the scholar swept floors, he cleaned courtyards, he carried water. No secret teachings were given. Frustrated, he finally confronted the priest. "I came seeking wisdom," he said. "Why have you wasted my time?" The old man smiled. "When you arrived, you wished to fill your mind. Now you are beginning to empty it." The scholar did not understand, not yet. Years later he would, because the greatest obstacle to wisdom is often the illusion that we already possess it. This is why the Hermetic traditions concealed knowledge, not because wisdom belonged only to the elite, but because certain truths become dangerous when understood intellectually but not lived. A sword in the hands of a child is dangerous. So is knowledge in the hands of an undisciplined mind. The teachings later collected within the Corpus Hermeticum repeatedly point toward a profound realization. The universe is not dead matter drifting through empty space. It is permeated by intelligence, order, and meaning. The ancients called this divine mind, not a distant force, not an angry ruler, but a living intelligence woven into existence itself. According to Hermetic wisdom, Every human being participates in this intelligence, though most remain unaware of it. Imagine a fish searching for water. It swims through it every moment of its life, yet never notices it because it has never known anything else. The sages believed humanity exists in a similar condition. We search desperately for meaning while immersed in the very source of meaning. We search for guidance while standing within an intelligent universe. The tragedy is not that wisdom is absent. The tragedy is that distraction is abundant. Today the temples have changed. The ancient sandstone halls have become glowing screens. The sacred silence has become constant noise. The tests remain the same. Can you remain attentive? Can you observe yourself honestly? Can you distinguish truth from appearance? Plato would later explore a similar idea through his famous allegory of the cave. People mistake shadows for reality because shadows are familiar. The Hermetic masters understood the same principle centuries earlier. Most people see appearances, few seek causes, fewer still seek first causes. That is where wisdom begins. The invitation of Hermes is not to believe blindly, it is to investigate deeply, look beyond appearances, question assumptions, observe patterns, seek the hidden law behind visible events. For those willing to do so, the temple doors never truly closed, they simply moved inward, and the first step remains exactly as it was thousands of years ago. Seek wisdom beyond appearances. Chapter 2. Mental Transmutation. The secret art of inner alchemy. Among all Hermetic teachings, few have been misunderstood more than alchemy. When most people hear the word, they imagine strange laboratories, mysterious symbols, and ancient men attempting to transform lead into gold. But the greatest alchemists were never interested in metal. They were interested in consciousness. Their true laboratory was the human mind. Their true goal was transformation. The Kybalion calls this process mental transmutation, the art of changing one mental state into another through conscious mastery. At first glance, this sounds simple. In practice, it is one of the most difficult disciplines ever taught, because it requires confronting a truth most people avoid. You are not your emotions, you are their observer. An ancient story speaks of a traveler crossing a mountain pass during a violent storm. As thunder shook the valley, fear consumed him. Every shadow appeared dangerous, every sound became a threat. Then he encountered an old shepherd sitting calmly beneath a rocky shelter. The traveler asked, "How can you remain peaceful while the storm rages around us?" The shepherd replied, "The storm is outside. Why have you invited it inside as well?" The traveler never forgot those words, neither should we. Fear itself is not the enemy. Fear is information, it is energy. It becomes destructive only when it takes control of the mind. The Hermetic masters taught that every emotional state exists upon a spectrum. Fear and courage are not separate forces. They are different degrees of the same energy. Hatred and compassion, despair and hope, weakness and strength, opposites are often closer than they appear. The initiate's task was not suppression. It was transformation. Consider anger. Modern culture often swings between two extremes. Some people unleash anger recklessly. Others bury it beneath forced politeness. The ancients considered both approaches incomplete. A skilled alchemist asks a different question. What is this emotion trying to become? Anger contains energy. Directless energy becomes destruction. Directed energy becomes determination. History provides countless examples. Many reformers, leaders, and visionaries began not with comfort, but with dissatisfaction. What separated them from ordinary people was their ability to refine emotional fire into purposeful action. This is alchemy, not elimination, transformation. Marcus Aurelius practiced a similar discipline centuries later. Faced with war, betrayal, disease, and political turmoil, he repeatedly reminded himself that events themselves were not the source of suffering. Judgment created suffering, interpretation magnified pain, awareness restored freedom. The Hermetic initiate learned to pause between stimulus and response. Within that pause lies power. Within that pause lies choice. Within that pause lies transformation. Imagine a blacksmith standing before a furnace, or a metal enters the fire. Impurities rise. The metal softens. It becomes something new. The same process occurs within human consciousness. Life's difficulties reveal hidden fears, challenges expose weaknesses, loss uncovers attachments. Yet these experiences are not punishments, they are furnaces. The question is never whether life will bring fire. The question is whether the fire will destroy you or refine you. This is the forgotten meaning of inner alchemy. Every emotion contains potential energy. Every setback contains instruction. Every difficulty contains hidden material for transformation. The masters understood something modern people often forget. Emotional mastery is not control, it is relationship. Do not suppress your emotions, study them. Do not fear them, understand them. Do not become them, guide them. That is the true secret of mental transmutation, and those who learn it discover a remarkable truth. The greatest power is not the ability to change the world, it is the ability to transform oneself within it. Chapter 3. The Principle of Vibration. There is a teaching within Kybalion that many readers encounter but few truly contemplate. It is simple, almost deceptively simple. Nothing rests, everything moves. Everything vibrates at first glance. These words seem obvious. After all, we know the wind moves, rivers flow, and stars travel across the heavens. But the Hermetic masters were pointing towards something far deeper. They were suggesting that movement exists not only in the visible world, but also within the invisible realms of thought, emotion, and consciousness itself. An ancient story tells of a young initiate who approached a temple teacher and asked, "Master, why do some people enter a room and immediately bring peace, while others enter and bring unrest?" The old teacher led him to a still pond. For several minutes they sat in silence. Then the teacher dropped a small stone into the water. Ripples spread outward in every direction. "What do you see?" asked the teacher. "The water responds to the stone." The teacher nodded. "And every human being is such a stone." The initiate spent years reflecting on those words. The ancients observed something modern people often overlook. Human beings affect their environments continuously, not merely through actions, through presence. Some individuals carry an atmosphere of calm wherever they go. Others carry tension. Some create trust. Others create unease. Before a word is spoken, something is already being communicated. The Hermetic masters described this phenomenon through vibration, not necessarily as a physical measurement, but as a condition of being, a quality of consciousness, a frequency of experience. The corpus hermeticum frequently points toward a living universe filled with movement and intelligence. To the Hermetic mind, stillness itself was not truly still. Beneath apparent stillness, motion remained, life remained, potential remained. The same principle applies to the human mind. A thought is never merely a thought. Repeated long enough, it becomes a mood becomes a temperament becomes a character shapes destiny. This is why ancient wisdom traditions paid such close attention to inner states. They understood that the quality of a person's inner life gradually determines the quality of their outer experience. not because thoughts magically alter the world, but because thoughts alter perception, and perception influences every decision that follows. Consider fear. Fear is one of humanity's oldest companions. It helped our ancestors survive dangerous environments. Yet fear possesses a peculiar characteristic. It narrows awareness. Imagine a traveler walking through a forest at dusk. Every sound becomes suspicious. Every movement appears threatening. Every shadow seems dangerous. The forest has not changed. The traveler's perception has. Fear compresses reality. Possibilities disappear. Options shrink. The mind becomes occupied with survival. The ancient initiates understood this long before psychology existed as a formal discipline. They recognized that emotional states function like lenses. Chance the lens, and the world appears different. A fearful person and a confident person can witness the same event and draw entirely different conclusions. One sees danger, the other sees opportunity. One sees limitation, the other sees possibility. Reality appears different because consciousness is different. This is the hidden psychological power within the principle of vibration. The state you cultivate influences the world you perceive. An old Hermetic saying teaches, as a musician tunes an instrument, so must a wise person tune the soul. A beautiful image because few people expect a violin to produce harmony if it has never been tuned. Yet many expect peace without cultivating inner balance. They expect clarity while feeding confusion. They expect confidence while rehearsing fear. The masters taught a different path. Become conscious of your emotional condition. Observe it honestly, refine it patiently, rise it deliberately, not through denial, not through pretending, but through disciplined awareness. Gratitude instead of resentment, purpose instead of aimlessness, courage instead of paralysis. These shifts may appear small, yet small shifts in vibration create large shifts in perception, and perception influences the course of an entire life. The principle remains as powerful today as it was thousands of years ago. Raise the quality of your inner state, and the quality of your experience begins to change with it. Chapter 4. Plato's Cave and the Great Illusion. More than 2,000 years ago, Plato told a story that continues to haunt thoughtful minds. It is one of the most profound parables ever written, and perhaps one of the most unsettling. Imagine a group of people chained inside a cave since childhood. They face a wall. Behind them burns a fire. Between the fire and the prisoners, objects are carried back and forth. The prisoners cannot see the objects. They see only shadows cast upon the wall. Over time they come to believe those shadows are reality itself. How could they think otherwise? They have never seen anything else. Then one prisoner is freed. At first he is blinded by the light. The truth hurts, the familiar world collapses. Everything he once believed proves incomplete, yet gradually he begins to see. He discovers the fire, the objects, the outside world, the sun itself. For the first time in his life, he encounters reality beyond appearance. This is Plato's allegory of the cave, but it is also a story about every human being. The cave is not merely a place. It is a condition of consciousness. The shadows are assumptions, beliefs, conditioning, inherited ideas, stories we accept without examination. The ancient philosophers understood a difficult truth. People rarely suffer because they lack information. They suffer because they mistake assumptions for reality. A man believes he is unworthy. A woman believes change is impossible. Someone believes success belongs to others. Another believes failure is inevitable. Years pass, the beliefs remain unquestioned, and gradually they become prisons. Invisible prisons, the most powerful kind, Because bars can be seen, beliefs often cannot. An ancient Greek teacher once asked his students a simple question: "How many of your opinions belong to you?" The room became silent. It remains one of the most important questions ever asked. Many beliefs arrive before conscious awareness develops. Family influences them, culture shapes them, experience reinforces them. Soon they become so familiar that they feel like truth itself. Yet Plato warned that familiarity and truth are not the same thing. A shadow can become familiar. It remains a shadow. The Hermetic traditions echoed this insight centuries later. They taught that awakening begins when a person develops the courage to question appearances. Not cynicism, not endless doubt. Discernment, the willingness to investigate, the willingness to ask, "Is this actually true? Or have I simply repeated it for years?" Consider how often people assume they understand themselves. "I am just an anxious person. I have always been this way. This is who I am." But are these truths, or descriptions repeated so often they became identities? The prisoner in Plato's cave faced a terrifying challenge. He had to abandon certainty. Most people resist this step. Certainty feels safe, even when it is false. Yet growth demands discomfort, wisdom demands examination, freedom demands awareness. The journey out of the cave is not a single event. It is a lifelong practice. Each assumption questioned is another chain removed. Each illusion examined is another step toward the light. Each moment of honest self-reflection widens perception, and slowly the world becomes larger, clearer, more alive. The ancient philosophers did not promise comfort. They promised vision. They understood that truth often arrives disguised as disruption. The familiar may crumble, old beliefs may dissolve, yet something extraordinary emerges in their place. Freedom, the freedom to see reality rather than merely react to it, the freedom to think consciously rather than automatically, the freedom to choose rather than obey conditioning. And that is why Plato's cave remains relevant today. Because the greatest prison has never been made of stone. It has always been made of unquestioned assumptions. The wise person does not fear discovering them. The wise person seeks them, for every illusion exposed becomes another doorway to truth, and every day offers the same invitation. Question what appears obvious. The light may be waiting just beyond the shadows. Chapter 5. The Principle of Correspondence. There is a phrase within Hermetic philosophy that has survived for centuries, passing from temple to temple, manuscript to manuscript, seeker to seeker, Sibyl words. Yet they contain an entire worldview. As above, so below, as within, so without. Many have read these words, few have truly contemplated them. The ancient masters believed that reality was not a collection of disconnected events, but a living pattern woven through every level of existence. They observed the movements of stars, the growth of trees, the cycles of rivers, and the thoughts of human beings, and they noticed something extraordinary. The same principles appeared everywhere, different scales, different forms, the same laws. An old Hermetic story tells of a young student who became obsessed with understanding the universe. He spent years studying the heavens, charting constellations, and calculating the movements of celestial bodies. One evening, after presenting his findings to an elderly teacher, he expected praise. Instead, the teacher handed him a polished bronze mirror. "Study this." Confused, the student stared into the reflection. Minutes passed, then hours. Finally, he protested. "I came to learn about the stars." The teacher smiled. "And yet you have ignored the nearest universe." The student never forgot those words, neither should we. The principle of correspondence teaches that the patterns we observe externally often reveal patterns operating internally. The disorder in a room may reflect disorder in the mind. The discipline of a craftsman may reveal discipline of character. The harmony of a garden may mirror harmony cultivated within the gardener. Of course, the Hermetic Masters did not claim that every external event is a direct consequence of personal thought. Storms arrive, illness occurs, history unfolds through countless forces beyond individual control. Their insight was more subtle. They understood that the state of the observer influences the meaning of what is observed. Two people can encounter the same challenge. One sees catastrophe, the other sees instruction. One sees punishment, the other sees growth. The circumstance is identical, the inner world is not, and it is the inner world that shapes the experience. This truth appears repeatedly throughout ancient traditions. The Egyptians spoke of Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order and harmony. The Greeks searched for balance between reason and impulse. The Stoics taught that mastery begins within. Different languages, same discovery. Order inside creates clarity outside. Chaos inside creates confusion outside. Consider a king who cannot govern his own emotions. He may command armies, possess wealth, and rule vast territories, yet he remains a servant to anger, fear, jealousy, or pride. Is he truly powerful? The ancients would have answered no, because the first kingdom every person must learn to govern is the kingdom of the self. The principle of correspondence reveals why. Hist patterns repeat. A person who avoids difficult conversations often avoids difficult decisions. A person who cultivates patience in one area gradually develops patience in others. A person who constantly blames circumstances may unknowingly repeat that pattern across relationships, work, and personal growth. The pattern changes costumes, the pattern remains. This is why wisdom traditions place such importance on self-observation. The goal is not self-criticism, it is self-recognition, to see clearly, to notice recurring themes, to understand the invisible architecture beneath visible events. An old temple inscription reportedly advised initiates, "Know thyself, and you will know the universe." A remarkable statement, not because the universe is small, but because human consciousness contains reflections of universal principles, the same cycles, the same rhythms, the same tendencies toward order and disorder. This is the deeper meaning of correspondence. The world becomes a mirror, not a perfect mirror, but a useful one, a teacher, a guide, a source of insight. When frustration appears repeatedly, investigate it. When conflict becomes familiar, examine it. When peace emerges, study its origins. Paths reveal truths that isolated events often conceal. The Hermetic Masters believed that transformation begins when internal and external life move into harmony, when values align with actions, when words align with behavior, when intentions align with choices. Such people possess a quiet power, not because they control the world, but because they are no longer divided against themselves. And that is the invitation of correspondence. Become consistent within. The outer world will never be perfect, but your relationship with it can become profoundly different. Eyelids the inner and the outer. The mirror will begin to change. Chapter 6. The ancient cost of scattered attention. The ancient initiates considered attention one of the most valuable resources a human being could possess, more valuable than gold, more valuable than influence, more valuable than knowledge itself, because wherever attention flows, life follows. Today this teaching feels more important than ever. Most people believe they are tired because they work too much. The Hermetic Masters might suggest another possibility. Many are exhausted because their attention is constantly fragmented, pulled in countless directions, rarely resting, never fully present. An ancient story tells of a young apprentice who asked a temple elder how to acquire wisdom quickly. The elder led him into a courtyard and pointed toward the morning sun. "Look at the sunlight." The apprentice obeyed. "It warms the earth," said the elder. Then he held up a polished lens. The sunlight passed through it and formed a brilliant point of concentrated light. Moments later, smoke appeared from a piece of dry wood. The apprentice watched in amazement. The elder nodded. Scattered light warms. Focused light transforms. The lesson was simple yet profound. Human attention works the same way. Most people experience their lives through scattered awareness. One thought pulls them into the future. Another drags them into the past. A worry interrupts a conversation. A distraction interrupts a task. An impulse interrupts reflection. The mind becomes crowded and eventually exhausted. The ancients understood that attention is not merely a mental function. It is a form of energy. What receives attention grows stronger. What receives no attention gradually weakens. A fear repeatedly entertained becomes powerful. A skill repeatedly practiced improves. A relationship repeatedly nurtured deepens. Attention feeds reality. This is why Hermetic schools devoted extraordinary effort to concentration training. Some initiates spent years developing the ability to hold a single thought without distraction. To modern minds, this may sound unnecessary, yet consider the consequences. A person unable to direct attention becomes vulnerable to every passing impulse, every fear, every temptation, every external influence. Their inner world is governed by accident rather than intention. The ancient teachers viewed this condition as a form of bondage, not physical bondage, mental bondage. Because freedom requires the ability to choose where awareness rests, the philosopher Aristotle observed that excellence emerges through repeated practice. The Hermetic Masters agreed. But they understood that practice itself depends upon attention. Without attention, there is no learning. Without attention, there is no mastery. Without attention, there is no transformation. Consider a craftsman carving wood. If his focus wanders constantly, mistakes multiply. If his awareness remains steady, beauty emerges. The same principle applies to thought, emotion, and character. Life becomes shaped by whatever consistently receives your attention. An overlooked danger of scattered attention is emotional exhaustion. When awareness jumps endlessly between concerns, the nervous system never fully settles. The body remains tense. The mind remains restless. Even moments of rest feel incomplete. Many people call this stress. The ancients might have called it dispersion of energy. Different words, same experience. The remedy remains remarkably simple, not easy, but simple. Reclaim attention deliberately. Choose moments of uninterrupted focus. Practice listening completely when others speak. Complete one task before beginning another. Spend time in silence. Observe thoughts without chasing each one. Small practices, profound effects. The ancient initiates understood something modern society often forgets. A distracted mind cannot perceive deeply. A scattered consciousness cannot access wisdom. Dot requires attention. Presence requires attention. Transformation requires attention. And so the challenge remains exactly as it was thousands of years ago. Will you allow your attention to be captured? Or will you learn to direct it consciously? Because whatever receives your attention today is quietly becoming your future. Guard it wisely. Chapter 7: The Principle of Polarity. Imagine a man standing at the edge of a battlefield just before dawn. His hands tremble, his heart races, every instinct urges him to flee. He believes he lacks courage. Yet a few hours later, he performs acts of extraordinary bravery. What changed? Did fear disappear, or did something deeper occur? The Hermetic Masters would answer with a surprising insight. Fear and courage are not opposites. They are different degrees of the same force. This is the principle of polarity, one of the most subtle and practical teachings found within the Kybalion. The ancient initiates observed that many things humanity treats as opposites are actually extremes of the same continuum: hot and cold, light and darkness, rich and poor, love and hate, fear and courage. The difference is not kind, the difference is degree. Consider temperature. No precise point exists where cold suddenly becomes heat. There is only gradual movement along a scale. The same is true within the emotional life. A person consumed by fear does not suddenly become fearless. A person overwhelmed by resentment does not instantly become compassionate. Transformation occurs through degrees, step by step, one movement at a time. This realization changed the way ancient mystery schools approached personal growth. An old Hermetic story tells of an initiate who struggled with anger. For years he tried to eliminate it. He prayed against it, resisted it, condemned it, yet the anger remained. Finally, he approached a temple teacher and confessed his frustration. The elder listened quietly before asking a simple question: "What if your anger is not your enemy?" The initiate was shocked. The teacher continued: "Fire destroys villages. Fire also warms homes. The problem is not the fire. The problem is whether you command it." The lesson transformed the young man's life. Instead of suppressing his anger, he began studying it, observing it, understanding it. Gradually, he discovered that beneath his anger lived a powerful desire for justice. His emotional energy had been scattered. Now it became focused. The same force that once created destruction became disciplined action. This is emotional alchemy, not elimination transformation. The Hermetic initiates understood that every emotional state contains potential. Fear contains awareness, anger contains energy, grief contains depth, even disappointment contains wisdom. The task is not to deny these states, the task is to move them toward their higher expression. Modern psychology has begun recognizing a similar truth. Emotions are not problems to solve. They are signals to understand. The ancients arrived at this conclusion long ago. They simply expressed it through symbols and philosophy rather than scientific language. Perhaps nowhere is the principle of polarity more visible than in the relationship between fear and courage. Most people assume courageous individuals feel no fear. History tells a different story. The warrior feels fear. The explorer feels fear, the reformer feels fear. The difference is not absence, the difference is response. Courage is often fear that has been given direction. The initiates understood this deeply. They never demanded perfection. They never expected immediate transformation. Instead, they taught gradual movement, 1 degree higher. That was enough. If resentment dominates the heart, move toward understanding. If despair dominates the mind, move toward possibility. If fear dominates awareness, move toward curiosity. 1 degree higher, the shift may seem small. Yet small movements repeated consistently create profound transformation. A ship crossing an ocean alters its destination through the slightest adjustment of course. Human consciousness follows the same law. Many people fail because they attempt impossible leaps. The ancients preferred steady advancement, measured refinement, patent mastery. They understood that growth unfolds much like sunrise, not instantly. Gradually, darkness yields to light degree by degree, and so does the human soul. The principle of polarity teaches a liberating truth. You are rarely trapped. You are usually positioned somewhere on a spectrum. And if you are on a spectrum, movement remains possible. The next step need not be dramatic. It need only be real, 1 degree higher, 1 wiser response, 1 better thought, 1 more conscious action. The ancient masters knew that great transformations begin this way, not through force, through direction. And that remains the invitation of polarity. Move steadily toward the higher expression of whatever you carry within. Chapter 8. The Principle of Rhythm. Stand beside the ocean long enough, and you will notice something impossible to ignore. The waves arrive. The waves retreat. Again and again, the sea does not apologize for this movement, nor does it resist it. It simply follows its rhythm. The Hermetic sages believed that life operates in much the same way. Nothing remains fixed forever. Everything moves, everything flows, everything rises and falls. This observation became known as the principle of rhythm, a law so universal that it can be seen in seasons, civilizations, relationships, economies, emotions, and even the cycles of human thought. The ancient initiates noticed that most suffering emerges not from change itself, but from resistance to change. People cling to success as though it will never leave. They fear difficulty as though it will never end. Both assumptions create unnecessary pain. An old story from Alexandria tells of a wealthy merchant who enjoyed years of prosperity. His ships returned safely, his business expanded, his influence grew. Believing his fortune permanent, he became arrogant. Then came a season of storms. Several ships were lost, trade routes collapsed, panic consumed him. He had never learned how to move with life's changing tides. Meanwhile, an elderly sailor who had experienced both abundance and hardship remained calm. When asked how he maintained such peace, he replied, "I stopped expecting the sea to remain still." Simple words, profound wisdom. The sailor understood rhythm, the merchant did not. The Hermetic masters taught that every gain contains the possibility of loss. Every loss contains the possibility of renewal. Every rise eventually encounters decline. Every decline eventually yields growth. This was not pessimism, it was realism, a recognition of life's natural movement. The problem arises when people identify too strongly with a temporary condition. During success, they assume they have conquered uncertainty. During struggle, they assume they have been abandoned by fortune. Both conclusions ignore the pendulum. The sages watched carefully for these movements, not because they could stop them, but because awareness reduced suffering. Imagine standing beneath a tree during autumn. Would you mourn every falling leaf? Of course not. You understand the season, you trust the process. Yet when similar changes occur within life, people often panic. Relationships evolve, circumstances shift. Opportunities appear and disappear. The rhythm remains. Only the setting changes. The Stoics shared a similar insight. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that change is woven into existence itself. To resist it completely is to resist reality. The Hermetic teachers agreed. They encouraged initiates to cultivate what might be called emotional neutrality, not indifference, not emotional numbness. Something far more powerful, balance, the ability to experience success without becoming intoxicated by it, the ability to experience hardship without becoming consumed by it. The pendulum still moves, but consciousness remains centered. This was considered a sign of mastery. The beginner celebrates wildly during victories and collapses during defeats. The wise person remains steady through both. Like a mountain observing passing weather, the storms come, the storms go, the mountain remains. Modern life often encourages the opposite approach: constant stimulation, constant reaction, constant emotional extremes. Yet extremes drain energy, awareness restores it. The ancient initiates trained themselves to anticipate change rather than fear it. They expected cycles, prepared for transitions, trusted movement. As a result, they suffered less when inevitable shifts occurred. Perhaps this is one of the most practical hermetic lessons of all. The next time life changes direction, pause, remember the ocean. Remember the seasons, remember the pendulum. The rhythm is not punishing you, the rhythm is expressing itself. Your task is not to stop the movement. Your task is to learn how to move with it. Because the moment you stop fighting natural rhythms, something remarkable happens. What once felt like chaos begins to reveal order. What once felt like misfortune begins to reveal timing. And what once felt like suffering begins to reveal wisdom. That is the hidden gift of rhythm. The wave retreats, the wave returns. Trust the cycle. Chapter 9. The Principle of Gender. Among all the teachings contained within the Kybalion, few have generated more confusion than the principle of gender. Many readers encounter the word and immediately think of biological distinctions between men and women, but the Hermetic initiates were speaking about something far deeper, something universal, something they believed existed throughout nature, consciousness, and creation itself. They taught that every act of creation requires two complementary forces, one active, one receptive, one projecting, one receiving, one initiating, one nurturing. The ancients called these forces masculine and feminine principles, not identities, not social roles, principles, ancient energies woven into existence itself. An old Hermetic story tells of a young student who became frustrated by his inability to progress in wisdom. He studied constantly, read every scroll available, memorized teachings, collected knowledge. Yet something remained missing. One day he approached an elderly initiate and asked why understanding continued to elude him. The old man listened patiently and then pointed toward a nearby field. There, a farmer was planting seeds. "What do you see?" asked the teacher. "A farmer sowing grain." The teacher nodded. "And what happens next?" "The earth receives the seed, and then growth begins." The teacher smiled. "Exactly." The student looked confused. The lesson seemed too simple. Years later, he finally understood. The seed represented action, the soil represented receptivity. Neither alone could produce life. Creation required both. This insight appears throughout ancient traditions. The Chinese spoke of yin and yang. The Greeks described active and passive principles. The Egyptians portrayed complementary cosmic forces maintaining harmony throughout existence, different symbols. The same truth, balance creates life. The Hermetic masters believed that many human struggles arise from imbalance between these two inner forces. Some individuals become trapped within excessive action, always moving, always planning, always striving, yet rarely listening, rarely reflecting, rarely receiving insight. Others become trapped in the opposite extreme, endless reflection, endless dreaming, endless preparation, yet little action, little movement. Little creation, one force dominates, the other weakens. Wisdom emerges when both cooperate. Consider a skilled architect. Before construction begins, imagination conceives the structure, vision appears first. Then planning, then action. The receptive faculty receives possibilities. The active faculty brings them into form. Together they create. Separately they remain incomplete. The ancient initiates observed this process not only in buildings but within consciousness itself. Luthika and intuition offer a perfect example. Modern culture often encourages people to choose one over the other. The Hermetic teachers refuse this division. Logic provides clarity, intuition provides depth. Logic analyzes, intuition perceives, Logic organizes. Intuition discovers, neither is superior, each serves the other. A wise person learns to cultivate both. Plato hinted at this balance when he described the philosopher's pursuit of truth. Reason guides the journey, yet insight often arrives from beyond reason's immediate reach. The greatest discoveries frequently emerge when disciplined thought and receptive awareness work together. The Hermetic initiates understood this deeply. They trained both faculties. The mind became sharp. The awareness became sensitive. Together they formed a powerful instrument. An old saying from the mystery schools taught, "The bird of wisdom flies with two wings." A beautiful image. Remove either wing and flight becomes impossible. The same is true within human development. Action without reflection becomes recklessness. Relation without action becomes stagnation. Discipline without compassion becomes rigidity. Compassion without discipline becomes weakness. Balance remains the key. The principle of gender reminds us that creation is not the victory of one force over another. It is their union, their cooperation, their harmony. And perhaps this teaching is more relevant today than ever. Many people live divided lives, thinking without feeling, acting without listening, receiving without creating, greeting without understanding. The ancient masters offered another path. Cultivate both forces, honor both capacities, allowing wisdom and action to walk together. Because the deepest transformations occur when the active and receptive dimensions of the self learn to cooperate, the seed and the soil, the vision and the work, the intuition and the reason. Together they become creation itself. Chapter 10, The Silent Chambers of the Initiates. Long before the rise of modern cities, before roads thundered with traffic and minds became crowded with endless information, there existed a practice so valued by ancient mystery schools that entire chambers were dedicated to it. Not study, not debate, not ritual silence. To modern ears, silence often sounds like emptiness. To the initiates, silence was a doorway. An ancient account describes a young seeker arriving at a Hermetic temple expecting profound teachings. He imagined secret symbols, scrolls, ancient revelations. Instead, the elder overseeing his training led him into a small stone chamber. There was no furniture, no decoration, no instruction. Only silence. The door closed behind him. Hours passed, then days. The seeker became restless. His mind raced, memories surfaced, fears appeared, regrets emerged, questions multiplied. He thought the exercise was pointless, yet when he finally left the chamber, something had changed. For the first time, he had heard the noise inside himself, and that was precisely the lesson. Most people believe silence means the absence of sound. The initiates understood something deeper. Silence reveals what noise conceals. The modern world provides a useful comparison. Many people spend their lives surrounded by constant stimulation, voices, screens, music, news, opinions, notifications. The moment discomfort appears, distraction arrives. The moment stillness emerges, noise rushes in to replace it. As a result, many never encounter their own minds directly. The Hermetic masters viewed this as a profound loss because wisdom rarely shouts, wisdom whispers, and whispers require silence to be heard. An old desert story tells of a traveler searching for a legendary sage. After months of wandering, he finally found the old man sitting alone beside a spring. Eagerly, the traveler asked dozens of questions. The sage listened quietly. When the traveler finished, the old man dipped a cup into the water. The surface was muddy from recent movement. "Look." The traveler stared. He could see nothing clearly. The sage waited. Minutes later, the water settled. The reflection became sharp. The traveler suddenly understood. The sage had answered every question without speaking. A restless mind resembles disturbed water. Clarity appears only when agitation subsides. The mystery schools built entire disciplines around this insight. Students practiced listening more than speaking, observing more than reacting, receiving more than arguing, not because speech is harmful, but because constant expression can prevent genuine perception. The ancient initiates recognized that every conversation contains two opportunities. One opportunity is to speak, the other is to understand. Most people develop the first, few develop the second. Silence strengthens the second. This is why hermetic listening became a sacred practice, to listen fully, without interruption, without preparing a response, without mentally defending existing beliefs. Such listening transforms perception. The world begins revealing details previously overlooked. Relationships deepen, insight expands, understanding grows. Even nature becomes a teacher. The wind through trees, the rhythm of waves, the stillness before sunrise. The ancient sages believed these experiences carried wisdom unavailable through constant activity. Not magical wisdom, experiential wisdom, direct knowing, a deeper relationship with reality itself. Modern psychology increasingly confirms what the ancients discovered long ago. Periods of quiet reflection improve clarity, emotional regulation, creativity, and self-awareness. The mystery schools simply arrived there through observation rather than research, different methods, the same truth. The hidden cost of constant noise is not merely distraction. It is disconnection from intuition, from reflection, from self-understanding, from the subtle perceptions that often guide wise decisions. The silent chambers existed to restore this connection, and although those ancient temples may have vanished, the practice remains available. A few minutes each day, no devices, no conversations, no stimulation, just awareness, just observation, just silence. At first it may feel uncomfortable. The young initiate felt the same. Most people do. Yet beyond that discomfort lies something remarkable. The ability to hear your own mind clearly, the ability to distinguish wisdom from impulse, the ability to perceive what constant noise keeps hidden. The ancient masters understood a profound secret. The deepest answers often arrive when the questions finally become quiet, and so the invitation remains exactly as it was thousands of years ago. Enter the silent chamber, not the one built of stone, the one within yourself, and listen. Chapter 11. Raising Vibration Through Gratitude and Order. Few teachings surprise modern people more than this. The ancient initiates believed that some of the greatest transformations do not begin with dramatic revelations. They begin with small acts, a grateful thought, a clean room, a disciplined morning. A moment of awareness. The modern mind often searches for powerful techniques, hidden secrets, and extraordinary breakthroughs. Yet many ancient wisdom traditions taught that the condition of a person's life is often shaped by seemingly insignificant habits repeated over time. Small causes, great consequences. Aristotle understood this principle well when he observed that excellence is not a single act but a habit. The Hermetic masters agreed. They simply viewed habits as instruments for shaping consciousness itself. An old story from Egypt tells of a young temple student who wished to receive advanced teachings. He imagined hidden scrolls, sacred formulas, and secret initiations. Instead, his teacher assigned him a simple task. Every morning before sunrise, he was instructed to clean the temple courtyard. The student obeyed. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Eventually, frustration overcame him. "Master," he asked, "when will the real teachings begin?" The elder smiled. "They already have." The student did not understand. Years later, he finally did. The courtyard had never been the true object of discipline. His mind had been. The repeated act of creating external order gradually cultivated internal order. The ancients observed something remarkable. Chaos attracts more chaos. Order creates clarity. A cluttered environment often reflects a cluttered attention. A distracted mind tends to produce distracted actions, and distracted actions frequently lead to unnecessary difficulties. This is not because the universe punishes disorder. It is because disorder influences perception, and perception influences decision-making. The Hermetic Masters understood that emotional states affect nearly every choice a person makes. A fearful mind sees threats, an angry mind sees enemies, a grateful mind sees opportunities. The world itself may remain unchanged, yet the experience of the world transforms dramatically. An old merchant once traveled across 2 kingdoms during a season of drought. In the first village he encountered, the people complained endlessly. They spoke only of scarcity, only of hardship, only of loss. Their despair infected every conversation, every decision, every relationship. Several days later, he arrived at another village suffering from the same drought. Yet something felt different. The people still acknowledged their difficulties, but they also spoke of cooperation, of lessons learned, of resources shared, of blessings that remained. The merchant was astonished. The circumstances were nearly identical. The emotional atmosphere was not. The difference lay in perception, and perception altered behavior. This is one of gratitude's hidden powers. Gratitude does not deny hardship. It expands awareness beyond hardship. It reminds consciousness that reality contains more than a single difficulty. The ancient initiates viewed gratitude as a form of mental alignment, not forced positivity, not self-deception awareness. The deliberate recognition of what remains valuable, meaningful, and worthy of appreciation. Over time, this practice alters attention itself, and wherever attention goes, energy follows. The mystery schools often incorporated rituals of gratitude into daily life, not because the gods demanded praise, but because gratitude refined perception. It elevated consciousness, it strengthened resilience. It increased clarity. Modern psychology increasingly confirms what these ancient traditions discovered through observation. Grateful individuals tend to notice possibilities more readily, recover from setbacks more effectively, maintain stronger relationships, make wiser decisions under pressure. Different language, same truth. The ancient masters understood that profound transformation rarely arrives through a single moment. It emerges through repeated choices, small disciplines, tiny adjustments, consistent practices. Like drops of water shaping stone, the person who spends 5 minutes each morning cultivating gratitude may seem to accomplish very little. Yet years later, the quality of their perception may be entirely different. And perception shapes destiny more than most people realize. The invitation is simple: correlate a daily ritual before sleep. Upon waking, during a quiet moment, reflect on what remains good, what remains meaningful, what remains worthy of appreciation. At the same time, cultivate order. not perfection. Order, bring harmony to your surroundings, bring intention to your habits, bring awareness to your choices. Because the ancient initiates discovered a powerful truth. Small acts performed consistently can raise the quality of an entire life. And often the path toward higher consciousness begins not with extraordinary revelations, but with gratitude and order. Chapter 12. Reality mirrors identity. There is a question hidden beneath nearly every human struggle, a question rarely asked, yet profoundly important. Who do you believe yourself to be? The Hermetic initiates understood that a person's answer to this question influences far more than behavior. It shapes perception, expectation, possibility, reality itself. Not because identity magically alters the world, but because identity silently influences every decision made within it. An ancient story tells of a sculptor who possessed a remarkable block of marble. Visitors admired the stone and wondered what masterpiece might emerge from it. Months later, they returned to discover a magnificent statue. A young apprentice asked how such beauty had been created. The sculptor replied, "I did not create it. I removed everything that did not belong." The mystery schools often viewed personal transformation in a similar way. The goal was not to become someone else. The goal was to uncover what already existed beneath false identities and limiting assumptions. This is why initiates rebuilt identity before attempting to transform circumstances. They understood that external change rarely lasts when internal identity remains unchanged. A man may acquire wealth while secretly believing he is unworthy. Soon his actions begin reflecting that belief. A woman may achieve success while viewing herself as inadequate. Her accomplishments feel fragile, temporary, threatened. The outer world changes, the inner image remains. And eventually the inner image attempts to restore familiar conditions. The ancients observed this pattern repeatedly, not only in individuals, in entire civilizations. People act according to what they believe themselves to be. The Stoics recognized this truth. Plato explored it. The Hermetic masters refined it. The self-image becomes an invisible architect shaping experience. Consider a traveler walking through unfamiliar territory. One traveler sees opportunity, another sees danger, one sees possibility, another sees limitation. The landscape is identical. The identity interpreting it is not. The assumptions people carry function like lenses. Most remain unaware they are wearing them. An old Hermetic teacher once asked his students, "Do you see the world as it is, or as you are?" The room fell silent. It remains a powerful question. Many opportunities are overlooked not because they are absent, but because they do not fit existing assumptions. Many strengths remain dormant because identity refuses to acknowledge them. Many transformations fail because behavior changes while self-concept remains unchanged. The initiates understood that lasting change requires movement from the inside outward, first consciousness, then action, then results. The modern world often reverses this process. People wait for external proof before allowing themselves to change internally. The mystery schools taught the opposite: become first, then express. A farmer does not harvest before planting. The inner seed precedes the outer fruit. This principle appears repeatedly throughout human history. Great leaders often carried a vision of themselves long before the world recognized it. Great thinkers trusted insights before receiving validation. Great builders imagined structures before laying foundations. Identity precedes manifestation, not in a magical sense, in a practical one. Belief influences behavior. Behavior influences results. Result reinforce belief. a cycle emerges. The Hermetic initiate learns to participate consciously in this process, to examine inherited identities, question limiting assumptions, refine self-concept deliberately. An identity built upon fear creates one future. An identity built upon wisdom creates another. An identity built upon helplessness produces one set of decisions. An identity built upon responsibility produces another. The difference compounds over time, like a river gradually carving stone. The ancient masters understood that conscious self-creation is among the highest forms of responsibility, not pretending, not fantasizing, choosing intentionally. Who are you becoming? What qualities are you cultivating? What assumptions are guiding your choices? These questions matter because identity quietly shapes experience every day. And the world often reflects back what consciousness consistently projects into action. The invitation of the mystery schools remains unchanged. Do not wait for life to tell you who you are. Decide who you are becoming, then live accordingly. Embody the qualities you seek, practice the virtues you admire, walk as the person you wish to become. Because the deepest transformations occur when identity changes first, and reality begins responding to the person you have chosen to be. Chapter 13. The Return to Divine Mind. What if the greatest loss in human history was not the destruction of a library, the fall of an empire, or the disappearance of a civilization? What if it was something far more intimate? What if humanity forgot what it truly is? This was the warning hidden within the Corpus Hermeticum. Again and again, the ancient Hermetic writings return to a profound idea. Human beings are not separate from the intelligence that governs the cosmos. They are participants within it. The sages called this intelligence the All. Not a distant ruler seated beyond the stars. Not a force concerned with punishment and reward, but a living, intelligent presence permeating existence itself. The Hermetic masters taught that every human being carries a spark of this greater intelligence. Much like a wave carries the essence of the ocean from which it emerges, the wave appears separate, yet it is never truly apart from the sea. An old story tells of a traveler who wandered across deserts searching for a legendary temple said to contain the wisdom of the gods. For years he searched. He crossed mountains, studied with teachers, collected sacred texts, endured hardship. Finally, exhausted and aging, he reached the temple. There he met an old initiate who listened patiently to the story of his long journey. When the traveler finished, the initiate pointed toward a polished bowl filled with water. "Look!" The traveler gazed into the still surface. He saw only his reflection. Confused, he asked, "What does this mean?" The initiate replied, "You crossed the world seeking what has been looking through your eyes from the beginning." The traveler wept, not because he had found new knowledge, because he had remembered something ancient, something forgotten. This is one of the central themes of Hermetic wisdom. The highest knowledge is often remembrance rather than acquisition. The ancients believed that most people live identified entirely with the surface of consciousness. They become consumed by passing thoughts, temporary emotions, social identities, personal stories. Like someone mistaking the waves for the entire ocean, yet beneath the surface exists something deeper, a dimension of awareness untouched by fear, pride, ambition, or anxiety. The Corpus Hermeticum repeatedly invites seekers to discover this deeper center, not through blind belief, through direct experience. The Greek philosophers approached a similar truth from another direction. Plato suggested that the soul possesses an innate recognition of higher realities. Knowledge, in a sense, is recollection, Aristotle observed an intelligent order woven throughout nature. The Hermetic teachers united these insights into a single vision. Human beings flourish when they align themselves with the deeper order already present within existence. This alignment is not passive. It requires participation. A musician must tune an instrument before harmony emerges. A sailor must adjust the sails to benefit from the wind. Likewise, consciousness must become aligned with wisdom if it wishes to experience greater clarity. This is why the mystery schools emphasized character as much as knowledge. Without discipline, wisdom becomes distorted. Without humility, insight becomes arrogance. Without self-awareness, knowledge becomes dangerous. The ego constantly attempts to place itself at the center of reality. It wants control, recognition, superiority. Certainty, the Hermetic initiate pursued a different path. Not self-glorification, self-transcendence. The goal was not to become larger than life. The goal was to become aligned with it. An old saying from the mystery traditions taught, "The wise person does not seek to dominate the river, they learn its current." Profound words. Because much suffering emerges from the attempt to force reality into conformity with personal desires, the sages observed another possibility: listen deeply, observe carefully, act wisely, allies rather than resist. In doing so, a person begins participating consciously in a greater intelligence, not surrendering responsibility, expanding awareness. The return to divine mind is not an escape from the world. It is a new relationship with it, the realization that wisdom is not merely something we possess. It is something we enter, something we align with, something we embody. And perhaps the greatest Hermetic secret is this: the intelligence you seek is not entirely outside you, nor is it entirely within you. It is the living connection between both. Seek wisdom beyond ego, and you may begin hearing what has been speaking quietly all along. Chapter 14. The final secret hidden in the 7 principles. At the end of every genuine mystery tradition, there comes a moment when scattered teachings suddenly unite. Separate lessons become one lesson. Different symbols reveal a single pattern. Many initiates spent years studying the 7 Hermetic principles before realizing they were never truly 7. They were one, seen from different angles. Imagine standing before a magnificent mountain. From the north it appears one way, from the south another, from the east entirely different, yet it remains the same mountain. The principles of mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender function in much the same way. Each reveals a different face of a deeper reality. Mentalism teaches that consciousness shapes experience. Correspondence reveals that inner and outer realities reflect one another. Vibration shows that everything exists in motion. Polarity teaches transformation through degrees. Rhythm reveals life's cycles. Cause and effect explains the hidden chain of consequences. Gender demonstrates that creation emerges through complementary forces. Different teachings, one system. The ancient initiates eventually discovered that none of these principles could be fully understood in isolation. Each depends upon the others. An old Hermetic parable tells of 7 blind travelers attempting to describe an elephant. One touched the leg and believed the animal resembled a pillar. Another touched the trunk and described a serpent. Another touched the ear and insisted it was a fan. Each possessed part of the truth. None possessed the whole. The same danger exists when studying wisdom. People become attached to individual principles while missing the larger design. The Hermetic masters sought integration, not fragments, wholeness. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood ideas associated with the Kybalion. Many readers encounter these teachings and conclude that reality somehow obeys thought. The ancient initiates would likely respond with caution. Reality does not obey every passing desire. Reality is not a servant to impulsive wishes. Something more subtle occurs. When consciousness becomes aligned, perception changes. When perception changes, decisions change. When decisions change, actions change. When actions change, outcomes begin changing as well. From the outside, this process appears mysterious. From the inside, it appears natural. A farmer who understands seasons seems fortunate. A sailor who understands currents appears lucky. An initiate who understands consciousness appears powerful. Yet each is working with laws rather than against them. The principles reveal those laws, and the deeper a person understands them, the more skillfully they participate in life. This was the ultimate lesson hidden within the mystery schools. Mastery is not domination, it is cooperation, not forcing, understanding, not controlling reality, allying with reality. An elderly Hermetic teacher once summarized decades of wisdom in a single sentence: most people seek power over life, the wise seek harmony with it. That harmony changes everything. The person who understands vibration guards emotional states carefully. The person who understands polarity transforms rather than suppresses. The person who understands rhythm remains steady during change. The person who understands cause and effect acts intentionally. The person who understands correspondence examines inner patterns. The person who understands gender balances action and receptivity. The person who understands mentalism becomes conscious of thought. Together, these practices create a new way of living, not perfection mastery, and mastery emerges through practice. For the next 30 days, the ancient initiates might suggest a simple challenge. Observe your thoughts, study your emotions, question assumptions, practice gratitude, cultivate silence. Choose one reaction each day and transform it consciously. Small actions, profound results, because wisdom is not proven through belief, it is proven through experience. And after all the symbols, stories, philosophies, and teachings, the journey returns to a single realization. The world you experience is deeply influenced by the consciousness through which you experience it, which leads us to the final Hermetic reminder: master your vibration, and you master your experience of reality, not by controlling the world, but by learning to govern the kingdom within. And that, perhaps, was the secret the initiates were protecting all along.